Hello, hello, hello. Today I am here with Tara and we are going to be talking all about intuition. I am so excited for this conversation. It is going to be so much fun. For those of you that don't know me, I am Sabrina Victoria. I am the host here at her talk show. And if you have not already subscribed, girl, what are you waiting for? These podcasts are guaranteed to have you thinking differently about life and business. Let's jump right in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
Hello, hello. I love that we already have some peeps jumping on live. Welcome. If you're listening on the replay here, make sure you hashtag replay in the comments wherever you're at so we can show you some love later on. We have had over 600 women grace this stage. We are adding another one to the list today. Tara, she challenges the status quo of societal norms, helping her clients unlock the gifts they buried a long time ago under layers of expectations of how one should be in their careers. I love that. Guiding her clients with understanding and compassion, Tara creates a sacred space to examine their old stories and then create new ones, bridging the worlds of analytical thinking and intuitive flow. What? They learn to embrace all of themselves. Welcome, lady.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Girl, that is good for real. I love this part. Bridging the worlds of analytical thinking and intuitive flow. That's something I can get behind.
Yeah, because you kind of need the analytical part to help you figure out what to do with all these lovely intuitive feelings.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
have
I've
a
learned
really
anyway.
hard time with the like complete woo-woo side of it because I am so like structured, analytical, and organized. So reading this, I'm like, oh, I can talk to this lady. Her and I can jive
great.
a little bit because she gets me. She gets me. So how did this happen, by the way? Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about intuition and work? What happened?
What happened? Great question. So when I was about 20 years into my civil engineering career, I completely burned out. There was a lot of stuff behind that and a lot of those like should be's in my career. I was fully embracing, but what was happening was that I was constantly on a hamster wheel of trying to prove myself, perfectionism, like really stuck in my head, which contributed to burnout. So once I really hit a wall and like had to go part-time in my job because I just couldn't do it anymore, I was forced to really examine why it all happened and then what to do about it, right? Like I still have to work. I still have to make money. I have to figure this thing out. And it was sort of in that process of like going through personal growth and development classes, working with a coach and a mentor, that I started to unravel all the stuff I had taken on and find all the pieces of me that I had basically cut away. And so bringing all those pieces of me back meant that all of a sudden I was like, I'm an intuitive person. And almost everybody around me in my inner circle, when I started to say things like, I guess I'm intuitive, would say, yeah, you are. And it was like literally something that I never even imagined because I was in such an analytical career and I had been taught to just do the computations and the calculations and only look at data and all of those things that I never even imagined that I had any kind of this like woo-woo intuition stuff, right? So as I went through all of that, I started to realize there's a lot of us out there who are breaking ourselves down, putting our little, like just putting pieces of ourselves away, especially people who don't look like, in my case, a white male. In engineering spaces, a lot of white men, and I don't look like them. And you have to try to try to look like and act like them, but it doesn't work, right? So there's a lot of us out there who have done this. I come across a lot of women in fields like this who are in various stages of burnout, basically, just like not really sure where to go. And so putting this together, saying like, well, guess what? You have intuition because everybody has it. And how do we bring that on board and then also marry it with you're thinking all the time? We all are. So we might as well be putting the two of them together and make it real practical and useful for you so that you can create something sustainable.
100%. Um, Before we dive deep into all of the things here, I would love to first talk a little bit about what you said here as far as various stages of burnout. Um, I myself have a hard time talking about this subject, so I'm going to let you talk about this subject because I don't feel as if I have ever been through burnout. However, I'm also that's also being said by the same person who would be on the floor, shaking, crying, screaming, um, at different points in my life over a decade of time, and then would also snuff my nose whenever somebody said that they had anxiety attacks because I didn't know that what I was doing was having an anxiety attack. So I thought it was just like, this is life. Sometimes you break down and you have just total mental breakdowns and cry and scream like the world is coming to an end, and didn't know that that was an anxiety attack until like a decade later.
Mhm.
So I often wonder, like, have I ever been in burnout? Am I now in burnout? So to those individuals like myself who are just like, this is life. This is just part of life. This is what happens. This is the thing. What does burnout look like? What are the various stages? Is there any other clues that you can give us regarding this mysterious word?
Yeah. So I would put myself in that category too that you just described, where I was like, well, this is just life. Like when somebody asked me, what how much stress do you have in your life? I was going, it was a body worker, and like every time I go get a massage, they're always like, oh my God, your muscles are so tight, right? And I was having a lot of neck and shoulder issues at the time. So I got asked this question: how much stress do you have in your life? And I was like, normal amount. I work full time. I'm an engineer. I have two kids. I'm married. We have to like figure out the drop offs and the pickups, and they're in school and daycare, and if I'm going to work out, I got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get to the gym by whenever. So that to me was normal. And this person was basically starting to say, like, I don't think this is normal. What you're doing, and everybody's different. Some people can handle that type of schedule, but for me, like the schedule itself was too much.
Mm,
So when I say various stages of burnout, it's almost like when we get to the point where there's so much exhaustion at the end of the day, or when you hit the weekend, that you can't even really think about what would you want to be doing. That I feel like is a really big clue into where is your mental state right now. Because if you're so exhausted, like if you just feel tanked at the end of the day, that's a clue.
mm.
That would be like one part. Like I'm just tired all the time. And I feel like the other thing that happens too is like you might be tanked at the end of the day, and you might feel like you're trying to juggle all of these various aspects of life, and you feel like one of those balls is going to drop and break at some point. And there's a lot of like anxiety or stress around that. And that just contributes to this whole feeling of like just I'm tired all the time. I don't have the energy to do things. I don't like for me personally, it was down to the point where someone would ask me what I like to do, and I would just be like creatively, what do you like to do? And I don't know. I had things that I did, like I loved to ski, so we would go skiing a lot, but it wasn't like I could say I really love to sit down and write, which I do. But at the time, I don't think I would have told you that. I had no idea what I liked to do. So that was like, those were like some of the clues. I think it becomes more apparent that you're burning out when you're at work and just feel overwhelmed all the time. Because one of the big lessons that I have learned is nothing is ever really done. We may have projects we're working on. Usually we're working on multiple projects at a time, no matter what kind of job you hold. And there's always something to do. But if you're in a constant state of overwhelm, of trying to respond to all the fires or what you think are fires all the time, that's also a sign that you're in a burning out cycle, because you can't really function very well at that point. You're just reacting to everything. So, it can be a big thing, like you get sick. Like I would say that at this point I was sick. It didn't really look like it. I was able to go part-time and still like be fairly functional, but I was having a really hard time sleeping, and the neck and shoulder issues and all the things. So I would say like my nervous system was just fried. Or it can just be almost like a speed bump. Like there's valleys and there's troughs that we get into all the time. And if you can get out of those quick, you're probably not in burnout. But if it's like continuing all the time, the constant overwhelm, constant stress, just can't get anything done, or feel like you're not getting anything done, then I would say you were probably in a phase of what we would call burnout.
Got it. Definitely makes sense. I also appreciate that you're saying that there's various stages of it versus just you're in or you're out. I feel like that's so much more true than just one or the other. Because I think sometimes we don't feel like we're dying, but there is just this constant flux, like what you were saying, of just you're sitting at work and you're just so overwhelmed you can't breathe. There's definitely different levels of it. So you're talking about intuition with work, which I don't feel like for the majority of humans, let's just go with Americans in the world today, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You've already kind of given us a little glimmer. We've got some little sprinkles that we're kind of getting it now. But when you say put your intuition to work, what's the first step to going about doing that?
The first step with that is to really learn how to tune into it and figure out, what does it feel like for you? Because everybody is different. There are types of intuition that are definable. Some people feel everything, like people you would call an empath, right? They can feel other people's feelings. Some people can actually feel stuff in other bodies. They're called clairsentient, meaning like if my knee hurts and somebody is clairsentient, their knee might hurt.
Wow.
Like if I have an injury, like they might go, "Hey, does your knee hurt?" It's really, that's wild. Some people just sort of know things. They just drop into their head and they don't know how they know it. They just know it. Those are usually like claircognizance. And then there's always the person who, has the visions, right? The clairvoyance, where they dream something and it comes true, or they just sort of have this vision and it comes true. So there's all these different ways that it can come in, but it feels different for everybody. And so the very first step in learning intuition is to get real quiet, which usually equates to doing something meditative like. I'm going to say meditative like, because like I love meditation. I love just sitting there, closing my eyes, and I can go meditate, but that doesn't work for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So it's doing the things that kind of put you in a meditative state and noticing what starts to what starts to come up for you, just sort of like thoughts that bubble to the surface, what feels good, how do you feel, heavy or light? Sometimes that works really well for people. What's just sort of dropping into your brain that feels neutral, but it's just kind of like a aha, right? So it's that's the very first step, because the first thing you have to do is figure out how does it show up for you before you can really practice working with it.
Yeah, that's great. So getting really quiet, meditative space, and then notice what comes up. What if the grocery list comes up?
That's a
What is that?
thought, right? So the things like grocery list, like, people who go to yoga classes, they say, I hate Shavasana because I just lay there and it's like lists all the time. That's someone who's probably struggling to get into the meditative state, which I did for years in yoga. Like I remember when I first started, I would just lay there like, why are we just laying on the ground? I got things to do, right? So it's just noticing that like anything like grocery lists, anything like the to-do list, the I forgot to do that, those are thoughts. And those aren't really your intuition talking to you. That's kind of your mind just keeping you on this little hamster wheel, right? Where you're just sort of like going through everything. So practicing techniques that help take you out of that mind hamster wheel stuff. Yeah, the struggle is real. I see that comment. It's is what helps to start to tune into the intuition. So when I say it's the first step, it's the first step that might take a while to really take hold. And it's a constant practice. You just have to keep practicing. And eventually the grocery list goes away, or if it shows up, you kind of go, list, and let it go. And then get back into a little bit more of a blank space as much as you can.
So is the ideal blank?
No, I don't think
Ooh.
so. I've read a lot about meditation. I've had people teach me meditation, and um, it's sort of been marketed in that way, that the ideal is that your mind is blank. But I would say, at least in my own experience and in talking to other people, it's less about the mind being blank and it's more about just sort of noticing the thoughts that are coming up when they are truly just lists, to dos, or something that sort of gives you a little bit of anxiety or makes you like, or evokes an emotion. Those types of things, it's learning to notice that it's there and then go, okay, it's there, and then trying to shift your focus back. So often what I do is shift my focus back to breathing, because it's the easiest thing to focus on. If you're doing the I'm just going to sit here meditation type thing, then I had a thought, and especially if I start to have like multiple thoughts, like I feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole of thoughts of like just one stacks on top of another, and all of a sudden I'm having an entire conversation with myself. Then I bring it back to concentrating on breathing and paying attention to the inhales and the exhales. That helps to just sort of shift the focus away. So it's less about blank space and it's just more about being able to shift the focus into something that's happening right now in reality, which is I'm sitting here on this cushion and I'm breathing.
Mm. Mm. I feel like sometimes I feel like all the time when I am in a meditative state of any sort, I always go into a creative space, or maybe I force myself to go into a creative space. I don't really know. Um, of like my business, for instance, like I'll go down just some crazy rabbit holes of visions, things. Would that be considered thoughts then? That's not necessarily where we're supposed to be? Or is
Well,
that creative and like what's the not that there's a right or a wrong, I'm just asking.
mhm. Yeah. So I'm curious to know that, like, when you have these, crazy visions and you start to like follow them, um, what does it feel like? Does it just sort of feel like you're getting, because they'll feel different. Does it just feel like,
I
oh, this
feel
this
like
is sort of light?
I feel like I need to get up and write it down because it's just so brilliant. But then I don't get up and write it down because we're in a meditative state or I'm in class or whatever it is. And then I continue and then we wake up, get up, and then I'm like, I lost the thought. And then I am pissed.
Okay, yeah. um, I would venture to guess that it's probably more of a intuition type thing, especially if it's like you just sort of see something or it just sort of shows up, right? Um, and getting up and writing it down is perfectly fine. Totally fine. Right? Because like we all have that thing, right? Where we wake up wake up either in the middle of the night at
Yeah.
2 or 3 a.m. with
Yep.
this awesome idea and then don't write it down and then wake and think I'm going to remember it. Or, getting it's when you're in any sort of state of like it takes your mind away a little bit, right? Or you have to focus on something. I get lots of awesome ideas when I'm driving. It's totally intuition. And I will see the whole thing. And again, right, if I don't write it down, I totally lose
Yeah.
it. I usually so the piece too here is to like not beat yourself up over it. I've started
Yeah.
to practice saying, okay, so I had it and I lost it. If it's important, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
Maybe in a
I
different
agree.
form, maybe different shape, but it'll come back, right?
Yeah. Agree. Yeah, I get the lucid dreams early, probably like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'll be like half in, half out of sleep and just so excited. And then I wake up immediately, like not immediately, but I wake myself up and write it down. But
Yeah.
some of my best ideas, like some of the best business pivots I've had were at that 4 o'clock in the morning and just genius, just like brilliance. It's
Yeah, that's
amazing.
anything like that is usually intuition. Like that's because you're not even aware that you're what state you're in at that point, right? That's your
Yeah.
subconscious like working.
Yeah. I'd love to ask on that. Because not all of us are, entrepreneurs where we can just pivot whenever we want and it's our business. People have jobs, people are moms. We can't just like run away and move to Paris by ourselves, right?
Yeah.
How should a person view, speaking of this lucid intuition morning thing that we're talking about, daydreaming in the car, when are we supposed to follow it? And when are we not supposed to follow it? Like how does that look?
That's where I would say what your like day-to-day reality
Yeah.
comes into play. Um,
Okay.
I had a teacher who was like, you get the intuitive hit, you just follow it. Well, that led me to quit a job before I should have quit a job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That before I like, so, having that experience of I need to quit. Like I need to quit. I need to focus full time on like what the new thing I'm developing, becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a business owner, all these things. It'll just fall into place because I'm aligned. Anyway,
Yeah.
I have a part-time job now because of that decision, because of the following of the intuition. So
Yeah.
it's taking say you get a hit to quit a job or to find a new job or to find a new job, right? Or just know you need out of a job if you're in like a 9 to 5 corporate situation. When you get those, it's time to look at, are you actually ready?
Mm.
Can you actually attract something that is going to be better, or are you going to be attracting the same thing just in a different environment? And can you really take a leap? If you're getting this push to take a leap, are you really ready for it? Because that's like the discernment piece, that building the muscle of, okay, I've got this, and when is it gonna happen? Because the timing is not necessarily instantaneous, and we live in this world, especially in the US, where it's instant gratification all the time. Just go on Instagram and look at all of these influencers and coaches who are telling you just to follow your bliss and you'll end up on a tropical island somewhere, you know.
I see ads for that all the time. It's
Right.
crazy.
And
This should
it's
be
like
illegal.
it works for some people, it doesn't work for other people. So that's where the practicality of, in your situation right now, what can you do? What are the small steps you can take to shift so that you're moving towards whatever vision you have?
Hmm.
So I had a vision come in like really early on. I'm gonna say it's like 2019, like right as I was just beginning to play with this idea of intuition. And I tried to push on it a lot, and it never went anywhere. And I finally backed off of it and went, okay, well, since nothing's happening, why is it that nothing's happening? It's like, what are the little steps that I just need to be taking? Always sort of holding out in space, like, I think this is the direction that I'm going. And the other thing with intuition too is it's just going to kind of lead you to a path. And then you're creating the path as you go. So it's
Wonderful.
it's so hard to explain because people just want to hear, follow your intuition, everything will be great. But it takes some time to understand, what does it mean in the context of your life? What does it mean in the context of what you need to survive? And then how do we build on whatever, vision you have, or whatever it's telling you. If you need to get out of a job, you might need to work on identifying the things that are happening in the current job and your part in them before you can go look for another place, because you just might end up in the exact same position 2 years later at the next job, right?
Yeah. I'm really appreciating this conversation so much more than any other conversation around this subject. And I think it's the realism of it regarding, like, it's almost as if the intuition is just the nudge to
Mhm.
take action. It's not the push to jump off the cliff,
Exactly.
which
That's how I
totally
view
makes
it.
sense.
I've tried
Yeah.
both ways.
That
I'm a
totally makes sense though, because it's like, when is the intuition supposed to hit? Like, if you're already planned and everything's great, and you've got a savings account filled to the brim and you're ready to go. I mean, the intuition almost isn't even necessary. It's like you're obviously already on a path somewhere. You're already like planning something. But the intuition is almost like, hey, like, get your shit together. We're about to mother effing pivot here. And then you can choose to follow it or not follow it, but you follow the nudge. You
Mhm.
don't, like, meaning like which I know you talk a lot about this, the action, like the action steps that are going
Yeah.
to then bring you to the a end result, not the end result, but like a result.
Right. Yeah. A nudge is the perfect way to think about it,
I
because
love that.
it's um you're right. Like, if you are somebody who is already got the bank and can just leap off into the unknown, when you get this download or this vision or whatever it is, and however it comes to you, that's one thing. But
Yeah.
most of us live in a reality where we need to pay some bills,
Yeah.
and we need to take kids to school,
Yeah.
and we need to cook some dinner or something. And
Yeah.
so it's not it's there has been this messaging out there to just make the leap, and if you're aligned, everything is wonderful, and it's basically, in my viewpoint, a twisting of kind of some of this personal growth and development messaging
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
it like, yeah, it is just following nudges. And nobody wants to be told that it's baby steps. We really like to like go like, oh, but I got it now, so it's going to be perfect, right? Well, nothing's
Yeah.
ever perfect either. It's just all sort of a journey on a path, whatever you
Yeah.
choose.
Totally. Yeah, this is reminding me when I wanted to leave my ex, extremely toxic relationship I was in. I would get these nudges. Like I would get this, I would always say my gut feeling or I feel a light. I have to follow the lights. And I would get in this fantasy of like just running away. And then immediately 30 seconds later, I'm like, I have no money. I have no car. I have no job. He controls my whole life. And so I almost had to be, I always say I had to be smarter than myself. So like the action plans that you're talking about, or, putting the steps together, I had to like almost work backwards. So like I knew what the end result was, it was leaving. And then what
Mhm.
are the steps that I had to create, step one, in order to get there? And what that was, like I had to create an income, I had to create a house, I had to get a car, I had to get and like save up and plan all of this stuff. And it took me 3 to 4 years to
Mhm.
leave. But what was so cool about it is when the day came, there was a day that came when all the bricks fell and I was 100% ready. And
Mhm.
I
That's
literally just leaped. And it was such a cool feeling of like following the nudges, doing all of the things to create the safety net so that when the house fell, it was like magical. Like I
Mhm.
literally would like reminisce about how brilliantly it was set up for myself, but like I did it for myself. Um versus what it could have been, which is just a mess. Like I could have just left and took out my clothes and it was this whole drama and this whole thing and I don't have a place to live and I'm calling mom and dad and I have no car and I don't have it could have been all this drama.
Mhm.
But it was so easy because of the action steps that I had taken.
Yeah. That's a beautiful example of how following of like knowing that there is an end result that you're working towards and just figuring out what needs to come first before you
Yeah.
get to that. Um, and that's not to say that like people who take, some people I feel like are wired to take these leaps.
You
And
hear
I think those
stories
are the
all the
ones
time.
that huh?
I said we hear stories all the time of people that
Right. We
just
hear
quit.
those stories all the time. Some people are literally just wired to take leaps. I mean, I know somebody who um, is basically just an entrepreneurial, energetic being. As far as I'm concerned, I'm literally like, I have seen this person multiple times with their back against the wall, and then they just figure it out and they're able to like pay their bills. And I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah, exactly,
Right. And
exactly.
they just inherently know. So like that's their intuition having guiding them. But for me,
Yeah,
that doesn't work like at all.
yeah,
So I'm definitely somebody who needs to be, and it's just the way that I'm wired. I'm somebody who needs to have some of those, I just need to take those little baby steps. And
yeah,
I think that recognizing that some of us are like that and it's okay. You're still
yeah,
following intuition, even if you're not like taking these giant, huge leaps.
exactly.
Or sometimes you
And a
take
lot
a
of it's
leap
just
and
in
it doesn't work.
lifestyle, like kids versus no kids, husband versus husband, your past, your culture, it's society, the way that you were brought up. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that tune into that. I was a single mom, my
Yeah.
everyone left me because of religion. I was a sinner. I got pregnant out of wedlock, so I had no family to lean on. I was a single mom, so like there was a whole lot of risk. So I had to
Yeah.
like set myself up. So you have to like analyze your situation.
Yeah, there has to be there definitely. And it has to fit the situation. Otherwise, you like you said, you're just creating more chaos and more
Yeah.
drama.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap things up here as we're wrapping up, what are some areas that you have really put intuition to work for yourself? What do you recommend for your clients as far as doing the same thing?
I really have put it to work in the context of my career because it's just kind of where my focus is. Um, so following my, I think a lot of it has been that part that I started off with like understanding that I had put all these pieces of myself aside. I was basically a shell of a person. I had really no idea who I was. And as I've done all of this work and like am now embodying more of me and bringing it to work, one of the things that I've noticed is that as I am more comfortable with being open about like I follow intuition and I believe in energy and I've had some really interesting experiences with it. Even though I'm still in the engineering world, I kind of have one foot in, one foot out. Like I can bring all that stuff and just sort of follow and pay attention to who is showing up in the space to help me out. I just had that experience with a meeting. I just was looking around where I'm working now and thought, well, I'm here half time, but I feel like people need some support and, some coaching. And why would I not bring my coaching into this place that is, helping sustain me while I get this business going? And wanted to gather the women and allies in the office together. And all I did was ask a question, and all of a sudden there's all these people coming out of the woodwork, right? Going, oh, I want to do this. Can we plan this? And can we plan that? And then we're just figuring out how to do it very kind of in a grassroots way to a certain extent. But that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't kind of followed that little nudge of, I feel like people around here need a little support, let me ask a question, and like being real comfortable with that. So in the context of like careers and stuff, I feel like it's those little things that once we, with my clients, a lot of times it's learning how the intuition comes to them. And there's also this healing process that has to happen around perfectionism and proving and trying to always do things the way that they've been done, like sort of changing the narrative within is the big piece. And that's a lot of what we work on together. So that then they can create these spaces for themselves where they are more comfortable, say, speaking up, or they are more comfortable saying no and setting boundaries or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's awesome. This has been great. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing some of this amazing value with us. I know that there are a ton of people that got some goodness out of this for sure. We still have a ton of people watching live. Thank you for being here. We obviously have a really good idea of who you are, what you do, but if you could kind of just condense it to a couple sentences, let us know exactly. And who should be reaching out to you? Who do you help?
So I help mostly women who are right about mid-career. I feel like that is where all the questions start to surface at some point. So 10 to 15 years into a career, just sort of feeling a little stuck or a lot stuck, or just like, I hate my job, I need out. Those are the types of people that I work with. And what I do is I help you really learn how to use like we've been talking about, learn how to use the intuition, learn how to put it together with like the way that your energy works, what works for you. It comes down to what works for, your day-to-day schedule. How does that work best for you? Are you forcing yourself to do something you shouldn't be doing? So those are all the kinds of things that we work on. And so those are types of people I love to work with. And people who are a little okay with the woo. I'm pretty woo at this point. So we'll be talking energy and all of those fun things too.
I love it. I love it. Very, very cool. Where can people find you? Your website, social media, where do you hang out?
So my website is right on the screen. It's createconversationllc.com. And on social media, you can find me on LinkedIn, name, website, or business name, and then also Facebook and Instagram. It's at Tara McFarland 111 is my handle. So tried to keep it as simple as possible. You can pretty much Google my name and find me.
I love it. That's what we like. Well, this has been great. To those of you that resonate with Tara and all the goodness that she shared today, make sure you check out her website, createconversationllc.com. It is in a clickable link in the description wherever you are watching us at. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up?
This has just been an awesome discussion. I really loved how you brought in some of your experiences and how they are such great illustrations for exactly what my message is and what we've been talking about. So fabulous conversation. Thank you so much, Sabrina.
Of course. Thank you. That brings us to an end of yet another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. Thank you so much for being here. To our dedicated listeners, thank you for staying with us until the very end. Remember to follow, like, and share. Once again, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to uplift each other every step of the way.